So I'm here in my hometown of Davie County, North Carolina. But for today's episode, we are headed to Wyoming. I've got a bow tag, and it is the first week of September, and I'm hunting with Ralph Dampman, a great friend of mine, the owner and operator of Trophy Ridge Outfitters. And I tell you what, early season bow hunt for some velvet whitetails. I think you're going to enjoy this. Welcome to Wyoming, folks. We are here in the northeastern part of the state, and it is opening day of deer season. So we waited all year. The anticipation is maxed out. I could not be any more excited to finally get out and start hunting whitetails. I thought about them all year, and I'm itching to get out here and finally start bow hunting some bucks. So we're in Carlisle, Wyoming with my friends at Trophy Ridge Outfitters, one of my favorite places on earth to hunt big whitetails, and they're in velvet. Let's get out there and see what's going on.
First morning here in Wyoming, had a really nice bachelor group come in right at first daylight, first 15 minutes of deer season 2019. And we've seen since then another bachelor group, as well as a couple solo bucks and some doe groups that are trickling through this area. We're in a ground blind right here overlooking this pond. We've got alfalfa behind us where they've been baling the alfalfa, and the bucks and does basically are coming off that food source. They've been feeding out there in the evenings, and they're going back to a bedding area. We've got standing oats, and there's some conifers, big standing pines back there. And it's clearly that's what the deer are doing. They're transitioning through here, getting some water, and then going and laying up for the day. Got the winds at our back. They're just kind of moseying right through here. It's a great setup. The action's kind of trickling down. We're going to give it another 20 or 30 minutes, then try and sneak out of here, and then get set up for the afternoon. But that's a good way to start the season, seeing a bunch of deer.
Well, as we're headed in for our first afternoon sit, I'm talking with our guide, Eric Dunn. He's been surveying the property for the last several weeks, scouting it, running a spot and scope, trying to get a feel for what deer are coming into that field. And we know right off the bat, there are a couple really nice bucks, big mature bucks, including a big 9-pointer and a big wide 8-pointer that we're really eager to get our eyes on. So about halfway through our afternoon sit, we start to feel some weather coming in, the temperature changes. I can hear wind rustling through the pines on top of that ridge, and sure enough, here comes a big hailstorm. All afternoon, we are seeing a ton of deer. But right as the afternoon starts to kind of cool off a bit, we see a big wide 8-pointer coming up over the rise. No doubt, this is the buck we're after.
That big 8-pointer has finally made his way out into this alfalfa field. There's a big 9, really long tines, and then there's a wide 8. Both are mature bucks, and the 8-pointer, we've been watching him for about 45 minutes now, and he's worked his way up this drainage, but he's working that shade as the sun goes down. He's staying where it's cool, and he's eating this alfalfa, and he's drifting away from us. Probably not going to come in today, but we know he's here. We've got a good look at him, and he's a shooter.
North American Whitetail is brought to you by Browning Clothing. North American Whitetail is brought to you by Mossy Oak.
So our second afternoon, it was a no-brainer. We had the right wind. We were going to go back to our ground blind and hunt that awesome alfalfa pivot. And sure enough, just like the previous evening, we saw a ton of deer, and they're all working their way up a drainage. And as soon as they hit that alfalfa, like clockwork, all those deer are feeding towards that shade right in that group of trees.
just had a nice 2-year-old buck walk right in front of the blind. Pretty 8-pointer, full velvet. A lot of these bucks are still in velvet, and they are just gorgeous. It's that time of year. A lot of these deer are starting to filter up the ridge just like we thought they would. They're feeding in this alfalfa, and they're feeding in the shade. And we can see the big 8-pointer, one of the bucks on this farm that I'm wanting to shoot. He's doing the same thing he did yesterday. He's feeding in the shade, and there's a tree over there that if he doesn't come in tonight, I guarantee you, I'm going to go in there at lunch tomorrow and hang a couple tree stands. We're going to set up there tomorrow evening if the wind's right.
So it's midday, about 11 o'clock, and we are headed into that alfalfa field, and we're gonna get set up on that hedgerow and see if we can set up a little ambush spot right where the shade of that trees is hitting that field. So if that 8-pointer does what he did the past 2 afternoons, we'll be right there and we're gonna shoot him. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, here comes our buck. Believe it or not, he's the first deer in the field. I see him coming down off the ridge. Immediately, I'm excited. I'm thinking that he's gonna jump that fence, walk underneath the pivot, and head straight for our stand. So as our buck gets into the field, he cuts a different route. He works through the alfalfa, drops down into the drainage, into the valley below us, and lays down and beds up for a couple hours. So we see our buck finally get out of his bed. So here he comes. He's out in the field. He's feeding out in the alfalfa, but we don't have our sunlight. The cloud cover rolled into the field. The shade cast by our trees was not there. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we have a perfect setup. All we need is for the sun to come back out and to force that buck to come our way. Like a miracle, the clouds move out. Here comes the sun. That field gets hot, and our big 8-pointer, as well as the 2 other bucks that he's with, on a beeline, change direction and start coming right at us.
All right, man, we just smoked him. I tell you what, it looked like it was just a hair bag, but a solid shot. Holy cow. Man, that's a big old wide velvet 8-pointer. That's the buck we're trying to kill. Holy cow, man.
I tell you, that was a great hunt. Plan came together. We watched this buck for 2 afternoons do the exact same thing. He came out in that big alfalfa pivot, and we were hunting in a ground blind, and he was skirting us, and he was going out in that field and hitting a pocket of shade on the backside of a little hedgerow, some small, short scrub oaks. And I said, golly, we need to go put a tree stand in those oak trees and try and hunt that shade. And if he does the same thing tomorrow, he'll come right out on top of us. And man, he did. He went out in that field, and we had a bunch of cloud cover, and the field wasn't sunny, it wasn't hot. So he was feeding out in the middle of the field, but those clouds moved out, and on a beeline, he came right to our tree, 18 yards. Man, beautiful Wyoming buck. My friends at Trophy Ridge Outfitters, this is the 3rd time I've hunted out here, and one of the best outfitters I hunt with. These guys, they know their deer and they'll put you on them. We made a move and it paid off. I tell you, when you're hunting these early season bucks on a pattern, if you see them do the same thing more than once, get aggressive and go after them. because it pays off. It paid off for us. Thanks for watching, folks. This is North American Whitetail.